Welcome to Productive Joy with Dr. Christy, where fun meets action.
Hi, friends. Welcome to Productive Joy. Oh my goodness, am I excited about this one. This fabulous human that I am getting ready to have a conversation with is effervescent and fun and joyful and pretty amazing and really, really, really smart. So that's the exciting part. But before we jump in with Berthine, I want to make sure that you are following this show because that's the way that you get automatic notifications that new episodes have dropped. So whether you're watching this on YouTube or you're listening on Spotify or Apple or wherever you're listening, please follow. That'd be really, really great because the more we talk to these fabulous people, the more I want you to be able to hear. So Berthine. So this is Berthine Crevecoeur West, who is genuinely amazing. But before I pump her up too much, she's a mom, she's a wife, she's a CEO. She works specifically with Westbridge Solutions. However, she does all the things. And as soon as you meet her, you're really going to be excited. So Berthine, my beginning is always, can you please convince people to listen past the first 30 seconds by telling us just a little bit about you?
My gosh, first, Christy, thank you so much for having me on Productive Joy. I have been looking forward to this since you made the announcement, so I'm delighted to be here. I want people to follow this show specifically because you are joy personified. I've seen you in action at conferences with a ton of people, and you really do the thing. You make work fun because I've been to so many conferences in my life. And the first time, we were talking about this in the green room, the first time that you and I met, I walked in and the energy was so incredibly just engaging and electric. And I was like, who is this person? We're going to be friends. I should tell her that. So people will learn so much from just this experience with you, especially with us coming out of a global pandemic, something that was traumatic for us all. We're reimagining work, right? We're going back to work in different ways, a lot of us. So I think your message is so timely, so important, so necessary. And it's great to really see the joy in what we do. And if we don't see the joy in what we do, you help us really navigate those ways of how we can reframe work, reframe joy, reframe ourselves. So people need to listen. That's all I'm saying.
And you didn't, because this is who you are so humble that you didn't even convince them through you. You mentioned me, which is so sweet. I happen to know that you are not only just one of these people that you're magnetizing, you bring people in, but you do that through some neurodivergence. You do that by embracing who you are fully. You do that through color and just bringing your best self. Like I'm looking at you. If you're not watching on YouTube, the amount of brightness in her face is just perfect. But that's just who you are. So tell us a little bit. All of those things have turned you into a very successful CEO. So why don't you tell us how all of those pieces have come together into who you are?
Oh, thank you so much. I got fired from a job I hated. That's the short story. So I'm at an apple that became a peach. So I was born and raised in New York and I moved to Atlanta, Georgia. And I love it because no snow, but always, I'm shouting out New York because you can't take the city out of the girl. But my first and only job here, it was a slow death of my soul. It was a highly toxic environment. My husband and I were new here and we didn't know anybody but maybe two people. And that was, oh my gosh, that was about 17 years ago. And then we found out that we were expecting a baby and then the company was having layoffs. So I was the last hired in my department. So the old adage, last hired, first fired. And I decided, because I do believe, just like my company, like I'm solutions oriented, right? So, and I'm data driven. So I do believe, even then, before I had the words for it, I do believe in being proactive. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to wallow in this for a day. Then I called my mom. Then I cried. Then I had ice cream because I was like, who's going to hire a pregnant person? But then I was like, guess what though? I don't have to come to this place that just makes me like question the existence of humankind and where the milk of human kindness went, right? I can start now to live in my truth, to show up as my authentic self, to ditch the clothing that did not make me really me. It was a part of me, but it wasn't all me. And then I thought to myself, I'm going to pull from my skill set. What can I do where the baby will be proud of me? Right.
Sure.
And then what I realized was by doing that, I did an internal SWOT analysis for myself, and that became the foundation of what is now Westbridge Solutions many iterations later. And so my son now is 15, and I'm happy to say that the company has grown so much. It is now the company that I couldn't even dream of, but had hoped for in my heart without knowing the words, right? And I'm continuing, and by that, it's successful in the way that looks like success to me. I get to drive my kid to school every day and pick him up. I get to engage with amazing people like you. I get to live locally, yet be a global citizen. So our clients are throughout the state of Georgia, throughout the United States, Europe, where else? New Zealand, Australia, Canada, and like a little bit of Latin America. So it doesn't get better than this. And so while it doesn't, I also know that my personality is such where I always seek to improve upon what I'm doing because we were just talking again in the green room about how we're like squirrels. And like, what can we do now? Right? What can we do? Because we can always strive to be our best selves. So success for me looks like doing the thing that makes you happy when it's hard, when you don't feel like it, and showing up in a way where if I show up as who I am authentically, then that lets everyone else give themselves the grace and permission to show up as they are authentically, whatever that looks like for them. That's like my hair looks, well, what color is it today? Not quite sure. Little bit of black, little bit of blonde. It was like bright red, or actually my son coined it. He said it was maroon last month. And I was like, yep, that's pretty much what it is. Mommy has maroon hair, right? And it's fine. Like I want people to know professionalism comes in many forms. And so I want to always show up as I am, whatever that is.
You're going to give us a masterclass today. I can just tell already you've dropped so many nuggets, and I could go in about 18 different directions, but I'm going to pick one that I know you are not just well versed at, but you live. You mentioned a SWOT analysis, that you did an internal SWOT analysis for yourself. Could you please help us understand, one, what that means, and two, how you leverage it both personally and professionally?
Oh, for sure, for sure. Okay, so a SWOT analysis refers to looking at four different quadrants of either a problem, a situation, a company, or yourself. So it's an assessment. And so that refers to, it's an acronym, SWOT, SWOT, refers to strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And they are not all the same thing. So I think a lot of times people do not speak to their strengths enough. And this is why they struggle, particularly women, with imposter syndrome, confidence gaps, self-esteem issues, all the things that really we are that we should be embracing. We fear, and that's cultural as well, that we don't speak about ourselves, but we fear being ostracized because we're seen as arrogant. I don't believe in false arrogance. I really think if I cannot claim who I am and stand in the space, then how can someone else, right? So that's what SWOT analysis is. And a lot of times the threats are internal. We tend to perceive people doing things to us or people stopping us from achieving certain goals and milestones. But then we have to really look inward and say, what am I doing to first attract what I want? Am I using the words that are going to open up the space for me? Am I showing up in a way that's going to make people want to open up the space for me? Am I being engaging? I'm what you call an ambivert. I am an extrovert, but I need time to recharge my batteries, right? So when I was growing up, I was super shy, but that's not what an introvert is. My husband happens to be an introvert, and he's the furthest thing from shy, right? So I really think it's good. Like one of my favorite quotes is from Socrates, know thyself, right? And so me knowing myself, that's what my personal SWOT analysis was. It was me sitting down and having a real conversation with Berthine and saying, okay, let's have a moment. Let's hold a mirror up to ourselves, because we were talking to ourselves, me and my brain. And so then I was like, let's list the things that are really your strengths, not what you'd like to be good at, not what you think you're good at. What are you good at, right? And so once I did that, I listed all of my strengths. I'm multilingual. I'm very I am data driven. I cannot stress that enough. I love data. And data looks like qualitative and quantitative. It looks like language. It looks like whatever feeds my mind and inspires me to do better or to redirect, right? Because sometimes we need to recalibrate. Then what are my weaknesses? What do I need to work on? Now, this is where you have to really give yourself a
Yeah, nobody likes
hug,
that part.
right? That's not the fun part, right? But I think when we do that, when we really think through it and say, okay, you know what? This is something where I have a gap. So it's a difference, not a deficit sometimes, because you may not be in the right space for that weakness to serve you well, right? So the weakness, it's like a two-pronged approach to looking at weaknesses, right? So where do I have a gap? And what can I do to turn that gap into either an opportunity or a strength, right? And so then we're moving on to opportunities. What exists out there for me, or what exists in here in my head or in my heart where that can help me have more strengths, right? Mitigate threats, right? Increase my opportunity seeking behavior, right? And opportunities look different for people. That might mean a meeting. That might mean giving a speech. That might mean writing that book, focusing on that blog, attending that conference. There's so many places and spaces for us to do good and to do well and to thrive and to help others thrive in turn. And then we're moving to the threats. So the threats are, and the threats, even internally, it's our mindset. Is my mindset what it should be in order for me to capitalize on these strengths and opportunities, right? How do I leverage all of that? Is my mindset something that is going to deter me from being the best that I could be? Another threat is confidence. How confident am I really? Right? Do I deal with imposter syndrome? Another potential threat is mental health. That can be both a threat and an opportunity, right? How's my mental health? Let me check in with myself. Am I sleeping more? Am I sleeping less? And if so, why? Right? Am I exercising? Am I taking care of my body? Am I eating right? I don't always do all of those things. I am highly allergic to the gym, but I do make sure that I eat healthy. So, and I do make sure that I find time for play, whatever play looks like for me. I love playing in my own head as well as at the beach, but I love being able to ideate. Like that's one of the most fun things for me because I enjoy thinking about thinking and then thinking about what to do. And there's so little time to carve out in a life to do that. So it is a privilege that I get to do that, but I also have to claim it. So if I'm not meeting my ideation quota in my head, whatever that is, right? Could be once a week, could be once a month. Do I have a chance to just sit with myself, right? And what am I doing to make me happy, right? Because I am a wife, I am a mom, I am many things to many people. But it's like when you're on the plane, are you putting oxygen on you first, the mask on you? Because if you pass out, you can't help anyone. So you know what? Maybe I sneak out and get a massage. Maybe I go to the movies. Maybe I have a cup of coffee by myself. A couple of years ago for a birthday of mine, I dropped myself at school. My husband went to work and I said, I'm going to take the day off. I went to a restaurant that I liked and I had a late breakfast. It was delightful, right? Now I celebrated with them, which was super fun as well. But it was just nice to just sit there, people watch, and just enjoy the day. So on a professional level now, SWOT analysis looks like for a strength, am I a team player? Am I communicating effectively? Am I engaging? For me, am I a strategic thinker? Because that's how I weave my way through life, right? Am I solutions oriented? Am I adhering to the data that I so love to research, right? How is that helping the team? And then a weakness would be, am I relying overly much on qualitative or overly much on quantitative? Or am I missing the emotional quotient that should come into a lot of this stuff, right? And then another example for an opportunity. How am I looking at my career? Am I looking at the strategy of my life or the plan? Because the plan is very different from the strategy, right? We need the strategy to create the plan. From the plan come the action items, and from the action items come the task. So what am I doing to make sure everything is in alignment? Because guess what? Sometimes I'm going to fail at stuff. And I say to people all the time, failure, especially when you're an entrepreneur, should be your friend.
Yeah.
Failure is not something to be feared. What is to be feared is not proactively recovering from that failure, right? So if I fall down and I don't get up, that's the thing to be fearful of, right? So with regard to opportunities, how am I learning? Because failure can lead to opportunity. So how am I learning from what didn't work? Right? What am I going to do with that information? How my entire business model had started out with, I'm going to show people how to not make the mistakes I made. Right.
Right.
For several years, that's what we were doing. Right. And so it was hard to fail, but it was fun to fail and then bounce back. And then threats. We have to think about trends. We have to think about a good example of a threat right now that I'm seeing is people being fearful of AI. I think if you are fearful of AI and you do not engage with it at some level, I'm not saying be a genius at it, but I'm saying if you do not use it to leverage it for the capabilities that it has, for the capacity that it could create in your professional life, or how it can serve as an assistive tool, because people program AI right now, right? That will change at some point where we invent artificial intelligence that can also program artificial intelligence, but artificial intelligence has been around forever. Google is not pixie dust, right? So, and your Alexa at your house, that's not a fairy making things happen. Turn the lights on, right? That's not what that is, right? That's artificial intelligence. So I think when we reframe our thinking about these things, it really will empower us. And the threat is by not embracing something like that, you are destined to leave yourself, your organization, your company behind. I, for one, have no intention of being left behind. I like to be right there in the crowd, running the race, having a good time. And I'm going to stumble. Of course I am. But guess what? I'm going to get back up. I'm going to keep running because
of course you are.
What the destination is. So I hope that answered the question.
Holy cow. Yeah, it did. And what I happen to know is that you've written a book about this and that which is awesome. And in the book, you talk about how to go through each step. How do I know all the things that you just were so easily able to say because you know you, right? But some of us don't know ourselves as well as you do because you've taken the time, you've put in the work, you've been thoughtful about it. You said a couple of things that I just have to go back to. Okay, so when you were talking about weaknesses, you said it's a difference, not a deficit. And I really appreciate that shift because we can't be good at everything, right? That's not even an option. But somehow in our minds, especially as women, I think we have convinced ourselves, oh no, actually I need to be able to handle it all, do it all, and I'd be good at it on top of it while juggling, because apparently that's a thing. So what I appreciate is the difference, not deficit. And then I also, gosh, you just said so many things. Failure is your friend, and it's about the recovery from the failure. So I wanted to put that back in the room so people remember that it isn't wrong to not get it right. It's wrong to not learn from not getting it right. And that's something that you have taught me as we've had conversations is, what are you learning from this? And how can you grow because of it? So thank you for that. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit for us because—
Can I just jump in for a second?
Yeah, go.
I don't want to forget this. I would be remiss if I didn't mention, because I want our listeners, our audience to understand what could have been failure, but was really recalibration.
Yeah, say more.
So you and I had a conversation and I was like, Christy, I wrote this book. And I was like, would you take a peek? And you took a peek and you were like, okay, I see this technical side, right? But where are you in this? Like the essence of Berthine, the fun stuff. And so I thought about that. I took it to heart because I could have approached it a variety of ways, right? And this is why it's important not to be stuck in our feelings, to really put our egos aside and say, you know what? Yeah, she's got a point. And so I thought about it and I was like, I went back to the drawing board. I was about to release the book. I went back to the drawing board and I rewrote parts of the book to add the fun stuff. And so I'm forever grateful to you for that, because you changed the nature of the book where people will now see the other side of my brain. And I think the first line is, I got fired from a job I hate. And so that's what you said. And I was just like, oh, you know what? I should give them that version of myself. So they understand that what built the technical part was the emotional human part of the
Yeah.
story. So I always am so grateful. I want to thank you for that. And I want people to know that is also how we can incorporate fun is by revisiting the moments of our lives that really are a sitcom, because that's the only way that I can describe that phase of life.
Oh, you're so right. And I hadn't forgotten that we had that conversation, but you're right. It is a perfect example in this space because you and I hit it off because we are very similar in some ways, but then we also have very different sides of us as well. And that's what makes a beautiful friendship or a
Yes.
beautiful pairing is recognizing that my strengths might be your weaknesses and vice versa. So having that conversation with you, and I have to give a shout out to a couple people. So Tom Goodlett and Jody Costa need a shout out for this one because they're the ones that taught me to put my personality into things. It wasn't that I wasn't right, but I had never thought about it in a book, right? So much like you, I had written a very technical book and then realized, oh wait, nobody's going to want to read this because they need a little more relatability, and that's all you did. Which kind of leads us into the question I was going to ask, which is, what's your definition of productive joy? Can you give me a scenario or an example? What's productive joy?
Sure. So first, I tend to break the words apart in order to give a definition. So first, I think being productive does not mean being busy. We need to disabuse ourselves of that ignorance because we've been lied to. And while we can do multiple things at once, we don't do them effectively, and we end up making mistakes a lot of times. And for me, that's related to joy. Because if I have to go back and do something again, my huge pet peeve is having to say something more than once. So you can imagine having to do something more than once, right? Because to me, I take it as I wasn't paying attention, right? And
Yeah.
so that's why I think if I don't lean in, then I can't be joyful in it. So what that looks like in my world is if I'm working on, let's say, we just had an event called She Means Business. And so that's actually a perfect example I'm going to use. So She Means Business started out as a 3 a.m. idea. That's when I have all of my ideas because I'm sleeping peacefully. And then my entrepreneurial squirrel brain is like, oh, wake up, do this. And
Yeah.
then I'm like, no, I'm going to go to sleep. Right. So that's the other side of me. But then when I wake up around like 6, if I still have the thought in my head that I'm like, we need to think about this. And that's usually the case. Right. And so it was a thought, and then it became an idea. And then I started that ideation phase in my head. What could that look like? What do I want it to do? What's the goal? What's the purpose? Right. And I said to myself, I want women to have real strategies. And I've been to tons of conferences, seminars, trainings around the country. And invariably, what I tend to find, it's not always, but it's often, more often than my brain would like, where we're like, girl power, yay, hugs, right? And I'm just like, what do I do here? Yeah,
Then what?
okay, this is great theoretically. What am I supposed to do? Like, what am I supposed to do? Right.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, I don't want any of that. I wanted for 2024 for women to start out with real actionable strategies that they can take the second they're done with whatever I'm saying. Right.
Yeah.
And then I thought, what am I going to make that look like? And then I said, let's make it early on a Saturday because then everybody can go on with the rest of their lives. Let's make it so they have like food that's good and fun. And then for this first inaugural one, I wanted to make it free because I wanted to kind of have people play in a playground, myself included. Right. I wanted to be in the sandbox and come up with stuff. And then before I realized it, I had 19 strategies that spoke to every aspect of business. And I said, let's have it in a colorful space. Let me wear my loudest suit, which is all of them. But
I love your suits. Your suits are perfect.
Thank you. If they don't make you dizzy, then it means they're doing their job. But they are. I love bright colors. And so, what ended up happening, it was a huge success. It was probably, I would say today, the best thing I've done thus far. And it was a play off of the book. So everything was in alignment with who I am and what I am. And even our tagline at Westbridge Solutions, like our slogan is empowering professionals for success, right? That looks different to different people. But for this, I wanted to focus on women. I wanted to empower them in real time. And part of it was because I got tired of people like, asking me, do you want to go get a coffee and then talk about stuff? I'm like, no, I want you to do the thing. So I don't want to meet for coffee unless we're talking about our kids, vacation, our spouses, like fun stuff. Like for strategy, I need you to learn, execute, and make it happen because at this point, I have a proven track record of success for my clients as well as for Westbridge. And I was just like, I'm not here to talk about, I wish I could do this, blah, 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 blah. Like, this is what you want to do. This is how you need to do it. Go do it. Right.
Yeah, that's your juxtaposition. You said you were a Gemini, and so you have two sides of you, right? So you're this creative, fanciful, fun person, but darn it, you're about business, and you're like, okay, no, I gave you what you needed. What is your problem? Like, let's go do the thing. I love that. And she means business. What a great title.
Because I wanted it to be fun, right? But I also wanted people to remember it. Like, she means business. That means handle it today, right? And I think too, with men, I don't see them openly admit to dealing with imposter syndrome as much. I know they do, but you know what? What makes us different from them where we tend to sit on the sidelines a little longer? Not all of us, but we do have moments of I'm going to sit on the sideline and then I'll wait and then tap in. I'm like, no, jump in the deep end of the pool. Just swim or sink, but either way, you know what the water will feel like. And once you get that feeling on your skin, there's no turning back.
And you exemplify failing forward too, like having that propensity towards action and recognizing, okay, so I'm not going to get this exactly right, but that's okay because I'm going to learn from this to make that even better. I am pretty sure I could talk to you for 2 solid days and not run out of things to say. But we're trying to keep this to 30 minutes. So I need to give you some rapid fire questions that I have a feeling are going to unleash a couple more nuggets. Are you ready? Are you excited?
I'm so ready. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So what is your definition of fun?
My definition of fun is anything and anyone that brings me joy. So my definition of fun could be hanging out with my kid and my husband on a beach. Like that to me is the ultimate amount of fun, doing nothing, or being with my friends and my family and just talking about everything. It's not the activity, but it's the people.
Very important. Okay. So, and you alluded to this. I can't wait to hear your answer. How do you know that you're showing up as your authentic self?
I know it because I live in the uncomfortable spaces. Wherever I go, I am an other, right? We were talking in the green room about how I love heavy metal, but I also played classical violin for 4 years. But people won't know that about me unless we have a conversation. So I love kind of breaking their imagined view of who I am. I love just shattering that to pieces. People assume that I'm not multilingual. And then sometimes I'll overhear a conversation and I'll chime in that language and then they're freaked out, which is so much fun. I know it's not nice, but it's fun.
Oh no, it's fun. That's fun.
It's so fun. So I think knowing who I am doesn't mean I necessarily have to make other people feel comfortable. It means I have to be comfortable navigating the uncomfortable spaces. And for me, I see it as an adventure, and it's kind of like choose your own adventure, right? Sometimes I want to engage in that, and other times I just want to be going to Costco doing the thing.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I love that. And it's the juxtaposition. I think it's powerful. Okay. How do you channel your best self on your worst days?
Oh, okay. So that's when discipline is required, right? And I liken that to going to the gym on the rare occasion when I have, right? There's a goal in mind, right? And so I have to, my desire to always show up as my best self is there in my heart, but sometimes in my mind, I'm like, all right, I just want to just have an easy day today, right? And then I think to myself, what's the goal? What's the end goal? Do you want to have a good day or an easy day? Right? Because the good means you may have to do the hard things. Right. And so that's when my discipline will kick in, even before the pandemic. But I've always had a hybrid experience, working, at an office, in person, virtually. So even virtually, when I first started the company, I would get dressed in the morning, like fully dressed for work. So I'm talking Spanx included, everybody, right? And perfume, because I wanted to feel like I'm at work. Now that would just mean going from my bedroom to my home office, but I needed that transition, right? So then when the pandemic did happen and the world went a little crazy for a while, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That was my anchor for myself. Like I was privileged and fortunate that the shift was not that hard for me. The only shift was my family was always home asking me for lunch. I'm like, what lunch? So I'm
You
like,
realize I'm at work. I'm at work.
I'm like, go have fun, make your own lunch. But yeah, so but then you know what? That's what it is. It's the discipline to know that there's a goal. And the goal is the joyful part. So even when I don't feel like Bertining, I know that I need to Bertine. And I
Oh
need
my
to
gosh,
Bertine
Bertining.
as much as
I
possible.
might steal that, Christying, because yeah, I have
Yes,
some things that are very uniquely Christy and it's a lot.
yes.
I'm a lot, but that's okay.
I like
Okay.
sugar. Too much for some.
Yes, right. But you know what? I think it's about owning that too and not
Oh,
dampering it for the sake of making everybody comfortable, because if
yeah.
we're comfortable, we're not changing, we're not getting better. So I'm glad you
Yes.
Bertine. I'm
I
glad you choose
try.
to do that.
I
Okay,
try.
last question. And I don't know how you're going to land on something because you said a lot of really great things. But if people can only remember one thing about this podcast that you've either said or alluded to, what would be the one takeaway you want everybody to have?
I want everybody that's listening to this podcast, that's tuning in, to A, keep tuning in, but B, to also do the hard thing now. Even if it's something that you're afraid of, do it while you're afraid, do it during your fearful moments. If it brings you a certain level of anxiety, I want us to re-examine, is that anxiety or excitement,
Mm,
right?
mm.
Is it anxiety or is it fear? Right. Because sometimes these things look the same, right? I want us to take care of our anxiety with our mental health and our well being. But what are you afraid of? Are you afraid of failing? Are you afraid of never trying? So I don't want you to have either. So do it now.
You are such a gift, and I hope that you realize just what a gift you are. I know that we don't get to be our best selves in every space, but we get to bring our best self to every space. And that's what I know to be true about you. You bring your best self to every space you go in. And whether people choose to embrace that or look at it with their head tilted is up to them. But I have never been with you that I didn't leave a little bit better. So thank you for sharing you on Productive Joy. And listeners, thank you. I told you this was going to be a masterclass, and here we are. And I am so grateful that you chose to spend the last 30 or so minutes with us. If you aren't already following, please follow and learn more about how you can create some productive joy in your space. I want to give a shout out to Nian, my producer, who is amazing and is making great things happen. And I also want to give a shout out to the intro and outro music. You may or may not know that that is my father, who is currently 86, but he has been a professional piano player his entire life, Mr. Mickey Finn. And that's him and his wife, Kathy, playing both the piano and banjo. So just want to make that shout out too. And thank you. Thank you for being here today. Our hope in Productive Joy is to make sure that you leave with one or two nuggets of wisdom so that you can figure out how to turn fun into action.